What if I told you that most leaders accidentally become chaos multipliers to their own teams? That every time you try to help someone navigate their emotional crisis, you're actually amplifying their turbulence and creating organizational dysfunction. The reality is, your well-intentioned support is often emotional sabotage in disguise. You think that you're being empathetic, but you're actually drowning alongside the person that you are trying to save. The brutal reality is your well-intentioned support is often emotional sabotage in disguise. You think you're being empathetic, but you're actually drowning alongside the person that you are trying to save. The leadership advice to be there for your team isn't just inadequate, it's dangerous when you don't know how to be emotional air traffic control instead of a chaos amplifier. Welcome back to Leading Through the Storm, our 4-part emotional leadership transformation series. If you caught Monday's episode on the airplane holding pattern, you learned how to regulate your own emotions under pressure. Today, we're taking it to the next level. On Worthy Wednesday, I'm revealing one method that separates leaders who amplify team chaos from those who guide others to safety. It's called emotional air traffic control, and it's how you help your team navigate their storms without becoming the storm yourself. Your role isn't fixing people's emotion. Your role is something far more powerful, becoming the steady voice that guides others to their own emotional holding pattern when they can't find it themselves. I want to share with you about the day I almost destroyed a critical initiative by trying to help a leader. I was advising an organization focused on preventing chronic illness. My area of expertise was addressing the behavioral health drivers of that chronic illness. The leader I was working with faced performance-based funding from multiple sources, and they were at risk of losing everything. They were challenged in finding ways to address what felt like the impossible. Our work together revealed depression and anxiety was preventing many of the patients from engaging in and completing treatment, which meant they weren't hitting the outcome goals required to maintain their funding. The challenge was the culture of the environment where this organization operated did not see the issues as relevant factors. When this leader came to me, they were completely flooded. Fear about losing funding, frustration about the patient-client engagement, and overwhelm about the impossible metrics that they had to meet. My first instinct, I wanted to jump in to the emotional cockpit with them. I started feeling their anxiety and I started absorbing the fear about the organizational survival, trying to solve everything that they were feeling. I had gone from being their steady advisor to being the co-pilot in the crash. Here's what no one tells you about emotional leadership. Empathy without boundaries is organizational implosion. When you feel what they feel, you lose your ability to guide them to safety. I'm not saying don't connect. I'm not saying you should not extend your frame of reference to understand what they are feeling. However, it is so important not to react out of that feeling. I was seeing the same challenging constraints that was being seen by the leader I was supporting. I was experiencing my own concerns about not being able to help them effectively. And within minutes, we both were spinning in the same emotional turbulence. And I had completely lost my ability to provide the strategic guidance that they desperately needed. That's when I realized I needed to get back to my control tower. I had to acknowledge my own concerns about helping them effectively. I had to establish my own holding pattern first. And then I could become true air traffic control for this leader. Once I grounded myself using the airplane holding pattern method, I was able to create space for them to express their concerns without absorbing their emotional frequency. I was able to help them connect back to themselves and the strategic outcomes that they were trying to achieve, not from a place of emotional reactivity, but from a grounded place of strategy. A major breakthrough came when they could separate their concerns about the funding from the actual implementation challenges. We discovered alternative service delivery models that addressed the behavioral health barriers, depression and anxiety, in ways that both helped their clients and met their funding requirements. They not only maintained their funding, but they exceeded their outcome goals by implementing a truly holistic care approach. That's when I learned the difference between being emotional air traffic control versus being another plane in the turbulence. The difference between helping and sabotaging. The difference between leadership and chaos multiplication. I want you to imagine a plane caught in severe turbulence. The pilot panicking, the passengers terrified. The air traffic controller's job isn't to feel the pilot's panic or to experience the passenger's fears. The controller's job is to maintain clear communication, provide navigational guidance, and to help the pilot find safe landing conditions, all while staying completely grounded in the control tower. This is exactly what the receive, perceive, and respond method, my framework for connected leadership, teaches us. Receive emotional information without absorbing it. Perceive what is actually needed for navigation. And respond from a grounded center, not chaotic storm. Most leaders think that they are being compassionate when they climb into that emotional cockpit with their team members. Well, you're not. You're actually being self-indulgent. And I hate to tell you this, but you're being strategically useless. Let me shake everything up you've been taught about supporting people through emotional difficulty. Traditional emotional support is fundamentally broken because it confuses feeling with them with helping them. The difference between drowning together and being a lifeguard on shore. Most leaders become emotional sabotagers through three helpful approaches. The emotional sponge. I feel your pain. The result? Now two people are dysregulated and no one can think clearly. The fix it firefighter. Let me solve this for you right now. The result? You become their emotional crutch, and they never learn how to navigate their own storms. The validation vampire. You're absolutely right to feel this way. Result, you amplify their chaos instead of helping them find their center. I want to make sure that I'm really clear that it is important that you validate where they are and what they feel. What is not helpful is when you amplify the chaos. Studies demonstrate emotional contagion can affect the entire team within minutes, outpacing any verbal intervention. So when you absorb others' emotional state, you don't just fail to help them, you become the transmission vector for organizational chaos. Tell me in the comments, have you ever tried to help someone through an emotional challenge and ended up feeling more overwhelmed than they did? Here is exactly how to become emotional air traffic control for your team without getting sucked in to their turbulence. Step one, you have to establish your control tower. Before you can guide anyone to safety, you must be absolutely clear that your job is not to feel what they feel. Your job is to stay grounded so that you can guide effectively. Before any emotionally charged conversation, you have to remind yourself, I am the control tower, not another plane in the storm. My worth comes from my guidance, not my absorption. Most leaders think caring means feeling. That's emotional immaturity disguised as compassion. If you've mastered Monday's airplane holding pattern for yourself, this is how you help others find theirs. Step two, receiving without absorbing. When someone comes to you in an emotional turbulence, your first job is to receive their transmission without taking on their frequency. You can listen with what I call control tower awareness. Hear their emotional weather report. Acknowledge their current flight conditions. Resist the urge to feel their turbulence and maintain your clear communication frequency. With that organization leader that I mentioned earlier, once I learned this method, I was able to stay in my control tower during our subsequent crisis conversations. When funding pressures created new anxiety, instead of absorbing their stress about the metrics and outcomes, I guided them back to their instruments. What are your core values around client care? What does your experience tell you about what actually works? What would you advise another leader facing these exact challenges? Step 3, you have to assess their flight conditions. Your job is to assess what kind of navigational support they actually need, not what they think they need. Ask yourself, not them. Are they in immediate danger? Is there a crisis requiring a rapid intervention? Are they temporarily disoriented? Are they needing guidance back to their instruments? Are they learning to fly? What skill development may be necessary here? Are they experienced pilots who just need permission to trust their training? The game-changing insight is that most people do not need you to solve their turbulence. They need you to help them remember that they know how to fly. Step 4, provide clear navigation. Now you respond from your grounded control tower, not from their emotional storm. Your responses should always guide them back to their own instruments. What do your core values tell you about the situation? When you strip away the emotional noise, what does your experience say? What would you advise someone else in this exact situation? What needs your attention versus what needs your anxiety? I understand there are going to be times when there is a severe emotional turbulence that comes in. And when this happens, I suggest you use what I call the instrument check protocol. The first thing you want to do is, let's do an instrument check. What matters most to you in this situation? The second thing, what do you know to be true regardless of how you are feeling right now? The third thing is asking, what would your best self do here? That often is very helpful in supporting the individuals. Make sure that they have their instruments aligned and ready to use. Step 5, guide them to their holding pattern. Your ultimate goal isn't to solve their problems. It's to help them find their own holding pattern when emotions spike. You want to teach them the personal holding pattern method from Monday, but from your control tower position. It sounds like you're in emotional turbulence. Can you recognize the storm conditions in your body right now? This is powerful because it taps into somatic responses. Let's help you establish your altitude. What are 3 things that you know to be true about your worth and your capabilities? What are your instruments telling you right now? What are your values, your purpose, your priorities? That leader learned to self-regulate in real time during funding pressures and client challenges. Now, when they hit emotional turbulence around performance metrics, they use the holding pattern method to separate their strategic thinking from their emotional reactions. They've consistently exceeded their funding requirements while genuinely improving client outcomes. That's emotional air traffic control success. I can imagine some of you are thinking, this sounds cold and disconnected. Let me destroy that myth right now. Emotional air traffic control is the most compassionate thing that you can do. Because when you stay grounded, you can actually help others. When you get swept up in others' turbulence, you're helping no one. Once you master your own air traffic control, can create an entire organizational culture where people help each other navigate through emotional turbulence instead of amplifying it. Train your team to ask these questions when someone's in emotional freefall. Do you need air traffic control, or do you want or need to vent? Are you looking for navigation guidance or problem solving? Should I help you find your instruments, or do you need me just to witness this? Teams that can emotionally air traffic control for each other become unstoppable during crisis. For significant emotional challenges, such as emotional escalation, overwhelm moments, high pressure situations, you may need to implement the emergency air traffic control protocol. This would include the first step, which is immediate grounding. I need you to breathe with me right now. So, helping individuals just get grounded. The second would be reality orientation. This is temporary. You have survived difficult things before. The third, instrument restoration. Let's get you back to your core truth. What's one thing that you know for certain about yourself? Fourth, guided landing. What is the smallest next step that honors your values? Here's your challenge. Identify one person on your team who regularly comes to you in emotional turbulence. This week, practice being air traffic control instead of joining them in the cockpit. This may shock you, but when you stop absorbing others' chaos, they actually get better faster. You've been enabling their emotional dependency by trying to feel better for them. When you master emotional air traffic control, you don't just help individual team members, you transform your entire organizational culture. You become the leader who can guide others through any storm without losing yourself in the process. And here's something that might challenge people. If you're emotionally exhausted from supporting your team, it's probably because you're doing it wrong. True emotional leadership energizes you because you're helping from a place of strength, not drowning from a place of weakness. Next Monday kicks off week 2 of our Leading Through the Storm series with something explosive. The emotional contagion crisis. How one leader's chaos infects the entire organization. I'll reveal the hidden emotional viruses spreading through your company right now and the exact protocol to stop them before they destroy your culture. Remember, you can't guide others to safety if you're lost in their storm. Your emotional groundedness is the greatest gift that you can give your team. We've covered personal holding patterns and team air traffic control. Next week, we're going organizational level, how emotional storms spread through entire companies and how one emotionally intelligent leader can change everything. Until Monday, stay curious, stay connected, and when others hit turbulence, remember, you're the control tower, not another plane in the storm. You don't have to shrink to lead. You just have to show up grounded.